What's going on, everybody? Episode 7 of Who Knows It's Just Life, featuring Maryland State Delegate Jazz Lewis, was recorded over the holiday season and will be dropping shortly. But this is episode 8, and I recorded it in response to everything that just happened today. So I wanted to get this one out as soon as possible to be timely. Episode 7 will be coming shortly. Thank you very much for listening. Greetings, good people. Welcome to Who Knows It's Just Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. Appreciate you spending some time with me today. Happy New Year to you. So today is the first recording since the new year in 2021. And so I'm going to do a little bit of reflection on 2020 and look a little bit into 2021, of course. But I wanted to call this episode Stay the Course, Change the Pace. And that's because I'm really not big on New Year's resolutions. I mean, it's definitely a time to reflect, but really it's just every day is a new year for somebody if it's their birthday. So I feel like any day could be a day for change. I know a lot of the changes I've made in my life have happened at random parts throughout the year. I know there was a period of time where I decided to shift my default bring to work lunch from like a sandwich base to like a salad base. And I think that might've been like in May when I decided to do that. I remember starting to work out for the first time, like actively in September years ago. So it doesn't have to be, now where things change, but yeah, it's still a time of reflection and whatnot. So I'm going to do a little bit of that, but I like the idea of staying the course. Cause basically, what we've been up to is what leads us to today. And I like the idea of just, keeping on that course, assuming it's the direction you want. If you're not on a path that you want in a part of your life, then here is an opportunity to assess that and course correct if necessary. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, just some updates. So the holiday season passed, and it was definitely mellow for a lot of people. I had a little bit of travel I was planning to do, but that got cut out. A lot of people's travel plans were probably thwarted or minimized. But I was still able to have a Christmas that is, relatively normal. My dad, myself, and my son are in one pod, and we visited with my mom and her pod. Her husband, and my brother and my sister were at my mom's house, and so while in the home, we had our masks on, and while we were eating, we were in separate rooms where we could still communicate, but we were in separate rooms, obviously masks are off for eating. So we were still able to enjoy the holiday together as a family, obviously with less travel and less of what we would normally do, but I can't complain because I know a lot of people had a lot less of a normal holiday season than that. I know people who were alone or were just with a significantly reduced family presence, and I know that that's not fun, but hey, life is about trying to make the best of where you're at and appreciating every moment. And if a low moment this past season, did occur, I'm sure that'll add new perspective and new gratitude to future holidays, assuming things get back to normal at some point. But anyway, I also do Kwanzaa now. I didn't really do Kwanzaa growing up, so it's not really something that I know by heart. It's not something that I, have down pat. But it is something that I think is important for myself and for my son to do. So we when I had him, we went through various I had him on New Year's, so we went through all of the principles of Kwanzaa, and had discussions about all of them. I tried to break it down for him for a 7-year-old. Some of them are a little bit hard to grasp, but I think it's never too early to get into that with the kids. So that was cool too. New Year's was also chill, of course, as most people's were. But anyway, I also wanted to give an update on that activity challenge I mentioned before. So my buddy and I decided to do an activity tracker, and that the first day of that was on December 3rd. And so there were 29 days between that and the end of the year. And I just checked my list. I worked out for 23 of those 29 days. So I was non-active for 6. My longest streak was 9 days. He beat me. His longest streak was 10 days. So that was kind of a fun thing that we did at the end of last year. We're gonna start it again this year. I've been working out since I think my last day not working out was the 30th, and I've been consistent every day since the 31st. So I'm gonna try to keep that consistently going. But yeah, actually, before I started that challenge with my buddy, I had already done a challenge for myself to try to end the year with a long streak of consecutive days of activity. I wanted to get 60 by the end of the year, and I knew I wasn't going to get it at a certain point. But basically, on October 27th is when I started, because that was my first day I could work out after getting a minor nose surgery to clear up my breathing ways, because my allergies have been screwing with my nose for so long. Anyway, there were 66 days from October 27th to the end of the year. I was active for 58 of those days, so that's 88%. It's a B plus, not too bad. Some of those days I did double up, so I did 64 activities across 66 days, which is pretty good. My longest streak was 20 days from October 30th to November 18th. My total minutes was 2,117 and a half minutes, which averaged to about 33 minutes per activity, which is not bad. A solid 30 minutes. My goal in this was to at least do 20 minutes a day, and so the fact that the average is 33 minutes is a good clip for me. So the goal for this year was to stay diligent and make sure I'm still on that. I posted on Instagram, stay the course, because me working out on New Year's Day is not, it's 2021, but let's start working out. Like, nah, like I've been trying to stay active. I've been trying to be, stay in shape and whatnot. And so, stay the course is important for me in terms of trying to expand on a foundation that's already been built. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm trying to come at from a 2021 standpoint. Yeah. So, and then the big news today is that Trump supporters stormed the Capitol of the United States of America, and that actually just happened. So my thoughts and feelings on that are very raw at the moment, but I felt like I still wanted to jump in and just touch on the topic. And what happened today actually added the second half of today's episode's title, Change the Pace, because that's crazy. What we just saw was bananas. I'm gonna get into that more. I'm motivated to be like, all right, I might be on some paths that I like, but I need to be more urgent with what I'm doing, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So, in terms of 2020, if I look back, I have to say that I'm blessed and I'm privileged to have had a good year. I know everybody's like, 2020 sucked. 2020 was terrible. 2020 wasn't bad for me. It's not without challenges, not without, some bumps along the road, because obviously those happen. But those happen every year. And I think with respect to what we were dealing with as a country and locally, Prince George's County and the DC area in particular was, hit pretty hard, relatively speaking, by COVID. I have to say I'm very blessed and privileged to be, to have had a good year. I mean, I've developed some really, really, really powerful and strong relationships in my personal life. I maintained my job. I met a few goals that I had for some years, one of which was getting into podcasting. And I didn't necessarily want to host a podcast, but with Racisms, I was able to produce a podcast. And as I mentioned in my very first episode, they actually inspired me to get on the mic and do my own. So between those two, and also the one I'm doing with my brother Lawrence, with Make America Whole and Reparations, I was involved with 3 podcasts last year, which really exceeded the goal that I had. And so that was great. I also had a weight goal. Like a couple years ago, I hit a weight that I never hit before in my life, and I was like, that's interesting. And it wasn't bad, but it was just something. It was just a check, and I was like, okay. Like, I'm in my 30s. Like, let me make sure I'm staying active. Let me watch the diet a little bit more, and let's see if we can get that down before it gets to be a problem. And so I came into this year at that, a little above that weight that I had hit, and I actually got 10 pounds below that weight at my best, which was like in the June, July timeframe, maybe July, August, and then by September it crept back up a few pounds, but ultimately, I held underneath that goal, and I'm happy that I was able to do that. And I want to try to stay vigilant and try to keep that momentum going. Again, stay the course on that. One thing that the pandemic taught me was how much I value my time. And my current employer is very old school in terms of time management, and they have an expectation and a culture that you have to be in the office. You have to be, if you're in the office, it's 8 to noon, lunch from noon to 1, work from 1 to 5. Like, it's a very, very structured old school style. Like, if I don't see you, you're not working. Granted, there are employees whose jobs are to be outside, and it's the converse for them, which is, paradoxically true for them. Like, if I see you, you're not working. So they're expected to be out and they're assumed to be productive. So there's just a lot of interesting cultural dynamics where I work. And while we were forced to work from home for 2 months, I realized how much I value time. Me working from home allowed me to be with my son more. Of course, he was homeschooled too, but even if he was at physical school, I would have been able to pick him up directly from school, no before care. I'd have picked them up, or I would have dropped them off before school, no before care. I'd have been able to pick them up right after school, no aftercare, stuff like that. But having such a time crunch job, I really don't see him as much in normal circumstances. So the pandemic really got me to realize how much I love having that time flexibility, and I need it really too. And I think my relationship with my son got better because I was around more. Like, rather than driving a whole bunch, as soon as I close my laptop because I'm done with work, like, okay, let's play, like, whatever. We got plenty of time before I got to cook and whatever else. So, whereas normally we get home at like 6 something, I'm cooking, like, barely enough time to like really have any fun. So I really appreciated the lesson that working from home taught me. Now, my company got us back into the office in May. So that's a crazy thought to those in the DMV who remember that we were slowly getting back into offices at that point. Many of my friends never went back to the office at all. But my company, like I said, very old school. They wanted to get us back in there. With my custody situation with my son, like, there were days where, when I have my son, I have to be home because there's no one else that could watch him, especially with the pandemic going on. So that was a little bit of a rough thing to go through with my employer. But at the same time, that was a rough thing that came out of the fact that I was privileged enough and blessed enough to have a job. So I really, while it was stressful going through it, like, looking back, like, I have to be grateful that I had a job that I did not lose, for one, and that it had the flexibility to, be remote, even if my leadership and the company culture didn't permit that flexibility. I still had, the wherewithal and the determination and the work ethic to make it work remotely when I needed to. So that was definitely a big, while it was a struggle, it was a big learning point for me, and I'm very appreciative of it. This year was also just crazy for me from a learning standpoint. I've always been passionate about racial justice, socioeconomic justice, all that kind of stuff. What happened what started it for me was when Ahmad Arbery was killed. I didn't even know about it when Ahmad Arbery was actually killed back in February. But when the video came out, I was made aware of it, and I ran the 2.23 miles for Ahmad Arbery on his birthday, May 8th. And, and I'm not a runner. I exercise, but I'm not a runner. So that wasn't something that I don't just wake up in the morning and run 2 miles every day. Like, that's not me. but I did it for Ahmad, and I have been trying to run a little bit more because I do see the value of that as an exercise, of course. But anyway, so that was very solid for me. It was a little damp. It was a little rainy that day, and like, there was a little bit of, it was raining a little bit, but I also like was tearing up by the end of it too, because it was just like, I was running in my own neighborhood, and I was just like, anybody should have the ability to run in your own neighborhood and not have, and to not be chased down by random crazy pilgrims and be killed. Like, that's just anyway. So that was an emotional experience, and then not even by the end of that month, we had Breonna Taylor, we had George Floyd, and Amy Cooper calling the cops and whatever on Mr. Cooper. So yeah, like, there so much happened in that period of time. That's when I talked to my brother and Lawrence about reparations, and how, from my perspective, that was a huge. Personally, I think it's the solution to racial issues pertaining to black people, black American people. I know there's a lot of other issues across with immigration and First Nation folks and all that. There's a lot of other things that need to be solved as well. But from specifically the black American population, reparations is literally the solution if done thoroughly and correctly, in my opinion. And I think that because most of our issues today that we see, police brutality, housing issues, educational issues, wealth issues, whatever, all of that is stemmed in slavery for one, and then the history subsequent to the quote unquote end of slavery, which I would say the end of chattel slavery, but not the end of slavery if you check the 13th Amendment. So anyways, I've been hip to some of this history and I've been hip to and passionate about these types of things for a long time. But that event and seeing all these white people out here protesting for the first time, and seeing the world react the way it did after George Floyd, at first I was like, why now, white people? Why this one? But at the same time, I was like, you know what? That's okay. I'm glad that you're here. And this is good. Let's move forward. Let's do something with this. And again, with Lawrence and my brother, it was like, reparations is it. So we started Make America Whole, got it incorporated as a nonprofit organization. I started doing a podcast with Lawrence, and we've been doing a lot of groundwork organizationally, and that's been great and very rewarding too. So it's definitely a strong year from that perspective, because honestly, I had this fire in me about social justice and all that kind of stuff for a long time, like I said. But let's be honest, I was involved with that stuff in college, but I graduated with an engineering degree, and with all these college loans, I'd be damned if I didn't like actually go into the engineering field, and at least for a little bit, earn some money. And I do like engineering. Engineering is a valuable skill set to have and a valuable service to the community. I chose not to go to defense because I didn't want to build bombs, but I went into the energy field, so I did energy work and utility work for a long time. And yeah, I had a family, I got married, had a son, like all these things happened, eventually got divorced. But like, this whole time I was like, man, like I'm the dude who like was active and then like basically had a cushy Fortune 200, Fortune whatever 100 job for a decade. And what have I actually been doing in the street? And so while the passion and the knowledge, some of the knowledge was there, like my actions weren't there. And I've confided this to some people, and be like, yeah, but you're raising a family, you're raising a kid, like that, like shaping that mind for the future is activist in and of itself. And I think there's truth to that. And that's something I'll probably talk a little bit more about that later. I talked about that with Jazz a little bit as well. Like how do we shape these minds for the future? But yeah, so last year, 2020 was really a year where I feel like the years that I was not in the streets active from a traditionally activist standpoint, combined with my knowledge and experience gained through corporate America, just the things I've learned about organizational structures and things like that, just like kind of boring stuff like that, helped prepare me for creating an organization under the nonprofit structure to pursue reparations and to get us what I think is justice in this case. And so I felt very motivated to do that, and I still feel very motivated to do that. And I'm just glad that things kind of coalesced in that way. So I feel blessed about that as well. So I guess overall, thinking about 2020, again, there were some challenges too. I didn't even really get into some of those, but I have to be grateful for the year that I had. And I also have to be very empathetic and sympathetic to those who did really struggle. I know people who they either lost their jobs, they lost forms of employment, they lost some income. I know mental health has been a struggle during this time frame. And I think that it really takes all of us to kind of keep us all healthy and keep us all up in spirits. So I know there's friends of mine who I've reached out to a little bit more than usual, just to kind of try to, make sure they're good, and folks have done that for me too. And I appreciate them for doing that. So yeah, so I know that turning the page to 2021 is a sight for hope for many in that regard. Now, after saying that, I also have to be real, because I honestly feel like everybody's been saying, oh, 2020 was terrible, COVID, pandemic, whatever. Look, that's not going away at all. And our only hope is a freaking vaccine that doesn't actually stop you from getting it. I read the CNN article. The vaccine doesn't stop you from getting it. It stops you from getting severely sick from it. So like, it's not like we figured out how to stop it from actually spreading. So like, this is a very, 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 very small victory, in this pandemic situation. And honestly, that's kind of disheartening, but that's where we are. And that's giving people hope. The election and, Biden Harris coming into office in a few weeks, that's giving people hope. And I see that's valuable. But I mean, masks aren't going away. Social distancing isn't going away. At least I think it's going to be the case for at least 6 months, if not the whole of 2021 for real, depending on how this vaccine rollout goes and how many people get it and how many people don't, and whether we get herd immunity and whatnot. Like, that all remains to be seen. So I'm not going to be too optimistic about 2021 being a better year from a pandemic standpoint. What I do hope, though, is that with leadership in government, we have safe and well-funded ways for folks to go back to work, go back to school, things like that I think are good for the economy, good for people, good for children, good for parents, good for us as people. I think the lack of social interaction truly is a hindrance to our humanity. We are social beings. So, I don't think it's wrong to pursue safe measures in this pandemic. And I think we know a bit more about it now than we did back in March, February. So we can build safe-ish ways to act in society and like I said, schoolwork and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, maybe bars and concerts won't be a thing for a little bit longer, but I really hope that we can get more and more of us back into a quote unquote normal lifestyle in a safe way. I'm not saying this to say, oh, the economy is more important than our safety. That's not what I'm saying at all. Don't get it twisted. I think safety is extremely important. I saw this quick little video of a kid in China going to school, and he had to they were spraying him down with Lysol and had a hand sanitizer, took his temperature, wiped down his shoes and everything to make sure everything was cool. And the post was like, this is called procedure and process. Like, you can go back to doing certain things in life if you have leadership that instills plans, processes, and funds them to make sure that they're available to schools, businesses, etc. So I'm not saying that the economy is more important than safety. I think safety is the first priority. But again, once we have those safety measures in place, I think, or we can start to revisit normalcy. So yeah, I had a conversation with my best friend about this, and she wrote a blog post, which I'll link to. And she called her blog post "Stay the Course," and she kind of wrote about some of the things that she and I discussed. And one of them was about her. I mean, she's a realist, and she called herself, she said, you can call me a cynic if you like, but basically, the reality is that we aren't out of the woods yet with the pandemic. We brought the hell from 2020 into 2021 because at the end of the day, the only thing January 1st is yesterday's tomorrow. But not to be all doom and gloom. I mean, we do have the opportunity to either stay the course or course correct today. Like, today is as good a day as any to do that. And so, I'm not big on New Year's resolutions, but I still do have some things that I do want to refocus on, things that I was trying to focus on last year with marginal success. I mentioned like the exercise and a little bit of weight loss and stuff like that. But, I also wanted to, monitor my consumption of sweets, which that was a struggle at times. Also wanted to get back into meditation, which I also need to get with more consistently. And one thing that I wanted to do, I saw this post on Instagram that showed Eartha Kitt. And I think I had seen this documentary before. At least I had seen pieces of this interview before. And, the question was something about like, do you love yourself or do you love other people or something like that? And her answer, regardless of the question was genius. It was basically, yes, I love myself and I want others to love me with me. And I thought that was a beautiful statement. And I think that a lot of people lose track of what's most important, which is loving yourself first. And so with myself and with my son, we are going to focus on self-love this year. And I thought in a way to do that, to make it kind of interesting, rotate year by year. So have this year be body, next year be mind, and the year after that be spirit or soul. And then, revisit body in 3 years later and just kind of have that be a theme. So I guess it sounds like I have a bunch of New Year's resolutions after all. And I don't mean to say that because, if I fall off on any one of those, like, it doesn't matter. Just like get back up and restart. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, yes, this is the time for reflection and whatnot, but I'm not gonna, like, if I fall off on February 3rd, I'm not gonna be, oh well, I gotta wait till next January 1st to do it again. Nah, I'm gonna take that L and then keep it moving. So yeah, yeah, I gotta get into this storming the Capitol situation. Like, and this is all still very raw right now. I'm sitting here like just still trying to process in my head what's going on. So this literally is happening today. I was at work. I was on a conference call trying to focus on that. Meanwhile, like, friends are texting me. People are hitting me up like, yo, what's going on over there? People from out of town, like, are you okay? How far away are you from the Capitol, whatever? And so, yeah, like, a bunch of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. Mind you, Trump addressed the crowd in the beginning and was tweeting later throughout the day. And these people literally took over the Capitol. They literally took over the Capitol. Like, the law and order president did not have law and order with his own people, which obviously is not a surprise. I'm not surprised by it, but to see it though. And honestly, I had a conversation with my friend too. I was like, yo, like, one of my friends was like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. DC is a blue area. Like, nobody's gonna care about, Maryland, whatever. Like, it's gonna be safe up there. I wouldn't want to be in the South. I'm like, no, man, this is DC. This is the Capitol. This is where the inauguration is gonna be. This is where stuff could and will go down. And today was exactly that, as sirens are blaring in the background. So this was just a reminder of that. Now, last year, so I've been like anti-gun my whole life, right? I'm a non-violent person by and large. My energy is non-confrontational by default. But after reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler and other things, and honestly talking with Lawrence for years, he'd been talking to me about this. I was like, you know what? It is about time to educate myself on firearms. I don't own one, but I did take a course, and I do have my HQL for here in Maryland, and which is a handgun qualification license. So that was a huge step for me. I went to a gun range. I've practiced using firearms, a bit now. Those few experiences using firearms this last year were my first in my life, and it's things like today that make me realize why that's important. I'm not worried about somebody robbing my house. I'm really not. And because, if somebody came in my house and wanted to rob my stuff, I'll put my hands up and say, take whatever you want. Like, I'm not here to, I'm not here to, assuming their faces are covered and they're not worried about me identifying them, anything you want. Don't hurt me and my loved ones who are in here. Like, that's it. But I'm not worried about home invasions. I'm worried about what's going on at the Capitol right now. That's what's got me worried. I don't want them to be the only ones with guns. Okay? So, and even if I don't have my own, I need to be familiar with them. So that if something ever were to go down and I were to come up on one, I need to know how it feels to shoot, how to properly aim, how to maintain one, stuff like that. Like, I mean, in the Parable of the Sower, that was life or death. I know that's a novel, but anybody who's read that book knows that joint was eerily attainable in terms of a post-apocalyptic world. So that's something that, like, I want to do more of. But anyway, so everything that just happened today is just crazy. I mean, Instagram has been off the chain today. Like, I just want to, like, recap some of the things. And I've been seeing a lot of, like, amazing posts from people who, and I've just basically been adding these to my Instagram stories. But Tamika Mallory said, I suggest black folks stand back and stand by while these white folks throw a tantrum in DC. America needs to face its real problem. Don't get out there. This is not our fight. Wholeheartedly agree with you. Sean King, what you are seeing now as white people safely storm the U.S. Capitol is evidence that American policing was never created to hold white people accountable or to keep the public safe from dangerous white people. American policing was created for white power, plain and simple. And that is plain and simple. The other one was like, just in response, like, but taking a knee during the national anthem was too much. And that was posted by Kareem 155. Love their stuff. Then there was another one. This might be my favorite one. If the United States saw what the United States was doing, in the United States would invade the United States to liberate the United States from the tyranny of the United States. I love that. Like that is just so real, because we see this from foreign countries. We're like, oh no, they don't respect democracy, and we need to fix that. Yeah, right. And then here's another one too. We're not asking you to shoot them like you shoot us. We're asking you to not shoot them. No, I'm sorry. We're asking you to not shoot us like you don't shoot them, which is crazy. Now, some of what we saw there, I mean, I'm not saying they should have shot him, but violence should have been used to quell what we saw here today. Because I mean, this is just out of control. Shout out to Decolonize Myself for these and a bunch of other awesome posts. And then, I mean, there's a picture of some random person sitting at the Senate chambers, just chilling with the feet up. And, to make it, and Noah Kane said, to make it here without dying is the epitome of white privilege, which is dead ass true. And then also I saw, like, Tyler Qualley and others posted this video of a black police officer inside the Capitol trying to keep these white people from entering. He's saying get back while he's simultaneously like retreating, pulls out his billy club, doesn't use it at all, like holds it up like he's about to use it, does not use it. And meanwhile he's calling for backup, and he's retreating while doing this. He's literally running up the stairs, and like these white people are literally chasing him up the stairs. Like what? I'm just like, yo. I gotta laugh because this is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. Like, if that was a white cop and there was one black person even approaching them, like that, like Walter Wallace Jr., which we talked about earlier with my buddy Mai. Walter Wallace Jr. was one man with a knife that was a tiny knife. It was approaching two officers, both who were armed with guns, and they feared for their life to the point where they had to end that man's life. Here is a black officer surrounded by white people, being encroached upon by white people, trying to defend the Congress of this country. He pulls out a billy club. He doesn't even pull out his gun, and he doesn't use his billy club. He doesn't use any kind of force. What? And I'm saying I'm expressing this as though I'm surprised, but I'm not, because I know the history and I know that this is what's to be expected. But knowing and seeing still gets a reaction. At least it does for me. I'm sitting there like, yo. So what this reminds me is that 2021 has got to be intentional and deliberate and strategic. This is what's happening in this country. Like, that was literally, if later we find out that the Coast Guard and more significant forces were not used. Oh, and there was the other picture too that showed how heavily guarded the Capitol was during Black Lives Matter protests as a comparison. I mean, the difference is clear, right? But we have to be strategic and intentional, and that's why I added the second part to this episode, which is change the pace. Like, if you on a good path, okay, cool, but we gotta get it up. We gotta up the ante. Cause this is nuts. This is absolutely crazy. Like, I need to not just be chilling here with my HQL in my wallet. Like, I need to actually get more familiar with firearms and procure one to make sure that I can protect myself and my community and my family and my community from stuff like that. That's terrifying. Because what you saw was that the police did nothing to stop them. And that is actually anti-democratic. What they did was actually against our principles as a country. From a democratic standpoint, it was against if you even give any value to just the sanctity of Congress and like the building and blah blah blah. If you don't care about that, whatever. But if you do, and you respect the hallowed buildings of our country, that was blatant disrespect, blatant. I'm sure they think they're patriots. That's the most anti-patriotic thing I could imagine. because you're literally preventing the government from doing what it's supposed to do. Because you're throwing a hissy fit that your candidate didn't get elected. And I mean, and my thoughts on this will mature over time. I'm just speaking off the emotions of it happening today. I mean, Trump has been inciting this for a while, like the whole stand back, stand by, way back. I mean, I had this conversation a couple months ago. I was like, I'm just worried that stand back, stand by will become stand up and activate. And today was that. So 2021, get ready. We got to get ready. We got to be intentional. We have to do what we need to do to get ourselves ready. First of all, health-wise, mental health, physical health, focus on that. I'm going to focus on that as well. I'm gonna, exercising, meditating, doing mental health exercises, doing that with my son as well. I'm trying to. Again, every day is a struggle to make those choices, but those are things I'm aspiring to do. Community-wise, like we need to build community. We need to, reach out and help each other from a day-to-day life perspective, but also building strategically, larger institutions and organizations to really change and shift what's happening. During my episode when I talked about the election, I mentioned how Kamala Harris and Joe Biden weren't anybody's favorite a year ago. So even though we're happy they won, like nobody picked them from the jump. So we're all gonna push them because we liked another candidate for some other reason. And so I think that energy is going to be very, very powerful. And I hope to God that they listen. And I hope that they are active and, passionate. And I hope that they are receptive to the changes that need to take place, even if it's changes that they didn't campaign on, even if it's changes that they don't even see the value of. I need them to hear us. And I need us to be as loud as we possibly can to fix this. Our children are not responsible for the world that they've inherited. We are responsible for giving to them a world that's as positive as it can be, hopefully better than the world we inherited from our parents. And the time is now. The time is absolutely now. Because what happened today cannot happen again. And yeah, we just need to do better. We just need to do better. So I'm going to close this out by revisiting my best friend's blog that I mentioned earlier. She said that she was thinking to herself that she just had to keep going. And that's what I think we need to do this year. Keep going. And on top of that, we need to love ourselves. A lot of times we sign off with friends and family. We say, I love you. But how many times do we say, I love me? And so with my son, we're starting to say, I love me, and then say, I love you, so that we reinforce that self-love. And we've already done some exercises where, I asked him what he loves about himself and what he's grateful for in today, what he was grateful for from last year, things like that. So we're starting to center on gratitude and focus that internally on self-love. And so one thing that my best friend put at the end of her blog was, do you, love you, and I'll do me, love me. We'll be better able to love those who are worthy of it and purge everything and everyone else that goes against that. And I think that's a beautiful idea, just starting with ourselves, centering ourselves and loving ourselves, honoring that body, honoring that spirit, honoring that mind. And from there, we have a foundation to build with others. Because although I felt like, I need to stay the course in some regards personally, the country needs a course correction. And I feel like once we build that foundation as ourselves and build community and strategize and be deliberate and intentional with these things, we can make that change happen. So with that, I'm going to end with the song I'm rocking to, which is a song that dropped last year. It's by Rory. It's called Take Back the Power. And we use that as the intro and outro song for the Make America Whole podcast. It joined us fire. And I feel like it's so necessary right now and today. And I'm going to put a link to that one. But that joint just has steady energy. And it's I feel like we need this. We need to take back the power and ultimately bring this country to its unrealized mission and vision. All right, y'all. As always, you can get at me on Instagram at realdadult. That's REALDADULT. I'd love to hear from you about this episode or any past episodes. You can also let me know if there's any episodes or content you want to hear in the future. So I appreciate you listening. Hope to catch you here next time. Be safe, be well. Peace.